This is Gene Munster, whose Loop Ventures is now Deepwater Asset Management. Good morning to you, Gene. Job cuts in Silicon Valley, they are piling up, and Google's parent company, Alphabet, the latest to reduce its headcount. And you can only imagine that 10% headcount reduction could turn into more. What do you think?
It's going to turn into more, Andrew, highly likely. And just to put some parameters around that, I went back and looked at where we were at the end of 2019 in terms of headcount and looked at all big tech. And most of them have grown at the same pace as their revenue, typically 50 to 80%. The one standout company that hasn't had that growth is Apple in terms of their headcount. They grew revenue 52% over that period, but their headcount was only 19%. And I bring up that as a case study, and I think it will be a guidebook for other tech companies. And ultimately, when you put this together, what it implies is that there's still another 15 to 20% of headcount reductions for these big tech companies in the next 3 to 6 months. It is just politically impossible to make the proper changes in the speed that these companies need to do it.
How much gain are you going to, from an investor perspective, are you going to get simply from the cut alone? Okay, isn't this a revenue story long term?
So for tech stocks, you need to do both. You need to have stable profitability, preferably growing profit margins, and you still need to be growing. If tech companies aren't growing, they're dying. I mean, it's a simple reality. What's the screen that we're ultimately looking for? We're looking for companies with persistent growth at a right valuation. That's our investment framework. But that screen in this case is we want to look at companies that have an ability to continue to grow revenue and have headcount is moving in a direction that's up, call it 30% from where it was pre-pandemic.
Gene, before we go, I see you renamed your company. What's the thought?
So that's correct. It's Deepwater Asset Management, and we introduced some new funds and introduced a new brand. And it better reflects who we are, which is we invest both in private and public growth companies driven by tech. And so it's the same team that I've been with for the past 20 years, the core team. We've had some huge additions in the past year. And from my perspective, nothing changes.